Alright, hello and welcome to my second video. So this one's going to be a doozy. I keep trying to record this and I keep messing up, or I keep running out of time. This is going to be a wee bit of an intense one, so just a heads up, folk. We're jumping into the deep end of the pool. So I don't know if you have heard about this new sensation sweeping the anime nation, and if you're a weeaboo, you might know where this is going. There's this new anime called The Rise of the Shield Hero, and I've probably now lost most of you because you know where this is going, or some of you are starting to go, don't worry, so there's a plot point where one of the villains accuses the main character of it creates a false rape claim against him, and it's caused a little bit of controversy. There's been seeds of truth on both sides here, and I think that there's some things that get forgotten in the mix that need to kind of get merged together into a single truth that I kind of want to go over. There's a bit of a personal element on this for me. I don't want to go into it too much just because it's a video for another time, to put it lightly. So basically, let's just say I've experienced being a victim of this, of being a victim of assault. So yes, I get to wave that little flag around. Yay me, I say with sarcasm. So for me personally, the anime itself is a by the numbers anime. It's not very original, and the whole false rape claim is just a shock trope thing. It could have been done differently and handled differently to get the same results, and I think that can be a video of its own self, like handling that in writing, as well as female villains, because that's another point people bring up, like, oh, she's a female villain, she doesn't have to be this perfect da 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 da, and stuff like that. And I'm like, yeah, there's a way to handle that. That's not how you handle it. I'm not saying, like, don't watch this anime, it's just not well written in my mind. But I want to jump into the reality of this kind of stuff, because something that I've heard, like, one particular person bringing up is like, well, that's just reality, that sometimes this happens. I'm like, yeah, but it's a bit more complex than that. Now, I do consider myself an inclusive, intersectional feminist, and I don't see feminism as a bad word. I do know that there's people who use feminism as an excuse to be an asshole. I also know there's people on the other side who do not realize that feminism basically is just saying, don't be an asshole, and mind your own business, and seem to get really upset by that concept. So just be aware that that's my viewpoint when it comes really, really simplified. Extremely simplified. Like, my 3 basic tenets is don't be an asshole, mind your own business, respect the environment around you. And then my other tenet is, as long as no animals or children involved and everyone's consenting, I don't give a crap. Which kind of falls into the whole mind your own business kind of deal. So I want to get into the whole, like, the reality of dealing with this stuff and false rape claims. And in order to get into that, you're going to have to deal with the other side of it, when it's not false. Like, why women don't report and stuff, and men too. We'll get into that. Sorry. Cat just shoved a claw in my ass. So let's get into that. So some of the statistics are being provided by RAIN, which is a website that provides resources for men and women and children who have been dealing with stuff like this. It's a decent website. There's a little controversy around it, but it is one of the bigger websites, so I'm not going to be too upset by that. It's just the fact that Rain is being supported by a ton of celebrities, and oh no, the celebrities are just donating money and that's all they do. They don't really support anything else. That's all it is. It's, you don't believe in it. It's like, I don't know. If I was somebody who was trying to get something taken care of and somebody was just handing me their wallet, I'd be just like, okay, fine. I don't need you to believe in this. I just need to make sure the money goes to the right people. That being said, so here's the statistics involving this. And yes, statistics can be a little iffy. So it's not an exact science. But again, these are done by professionals. You and I are not professionals. Keep that in mind. So the statistic is that for women, it's about 1 in 5. It actually used to be 1 in 4. So yay, we improved it a little bit. For men, it'll be 1 in 10. And that's possibly due to underreporting. It may be even closer to the 1 in 5. Because men don't talk about stuff like that. Which is a problem. We know that about, at least for women, 40% of sexual assault and rape is actually, actually reported. And 60% isn't. Now, this isn't an exact number either, but we know this based off of the fact that women don't always report to an uncaring, unsympathetic police officer where they know nothing's going to get done. And we'll get into that in a minute. But they do talk to their friends. They do talk to their therapists. They do talk to their families, and they do take anonymous surveys. Sometimes they go public years after the fact when they feel comfortable to come forward about it. When maybe certain people are no longer involved in their lives, stuff like that. Maybe when they realize, it's not their fault, and this isn't normal when people do stuff like this. Stuff like that, So, that's how we kind of know. And inputting all that data. And reason why women don't always report to uncaring, unsympathetic cops who don't do their job, is because the statistics get even worse as you go further down that train of pressing charges, to getting into a courtroom, to actually conviction. Now, it's not just the complexity of dealing with a thing like a rape case, or just dealing with a violent crime in general. The he said, she said, and evidence, and the fact that trauma can do a number on your memory. There's been plenty of times where people have had black spots when it comes to their memories, and that's just regular old by the numbers sexual assault. That is such a technical way of putting it. That's not even talking about individuals who have been drugged, individuals who have had alcohol in their system, who may had influenced by outside influences that may affect their memories. Now, keep in mind, I do not believe that that's their fault kind of deal. I believe that rapists are predators that will go for the most vulnerable individual, and a very drunk girl is very, very vulnerable. A very drunk man is also very, very vulnerable. That's just what they do. They're predators who seek power and control. Rape is not about sex, it's about power and control. Keep that in mind. But the thing is even if we take that out of the situation, if we deal with cases where there is evidence, it still is really bad. You're dealing with cops who have no sensitivity training, who are bigoted, who carry around these concepts of perfect victimhood, of slut shaming and victim blaming and all this stuff. Like, there is no law and order SVU in the real world for these people. I wish there was. I wish fiction would inspire reality here, because it would help so much. Get on that, New York. In the case of, like, just in Chicago alone, there was, I don't know if you heard about this news story. It's an older news story. Way back, it actually involved a lady from Law and Order SVU, surprisingly. There was a warehouse full of rape kits that were never tested and were poorly taken care of. Like, the evidence lost. Thousands of kits lost. Cannot be used. Never convicted. When they actually were able to test them, they were able to catch like 5 rapists and 2 serial rapists kind of deal. And yeah, yeah, that's why women don't report, because they're put in a warehouse and forgotten about kind of deal. And if they can get past that stage for whatever reason, and this isn't just Chicago alone, this is all over. You know, they can get past that stage into a courtroom. You're dealing with the trauma all over again, having to deal with the repetition of dealing with the trauma, of having to repeat that over and over and over and over again. You have to deal with a lawyer who's going to do everything in his power to convince the jury you're crazy, who's going to convince you you're crazy, to make you look like a bad person, to victim blame you, to slut shame you. They're going to use every dirty trick in the book. And if you, by some miracle, get this dude to be convicted as guilty, you may not see this dude go to jail at all, despite being proven guilty. In the case of Brock Turner, and the recent case where the bus driver who sexually assaulted a underage girl got off with a fine. And even if they go to jail, they may not see double digits. And the problem is, and some people might also bring up with, like, the Chicago thing, like, oh yeah, but there's not enough funding. Okay, where's the funding going? Rape is a violent crime. And the reason why there's no funding going to it is because people do not consider it a violent crime. They do not consider it a crime that destroys people's lives. And this can go as far as the sexual assault of underage girls. Like, seriously, I have seen, on personal experience, I have seen people try to victim blame girls as young as 6 or 7. It is insane, because yes, her Hello Kitty sneakers were so seductive that he just couldn't help himself. Seriously, just the mental gymnastics they have to go through to do this, it's just terrible. And here's another thing. Harassment from an outside world. You have people who, and it's understandable, you don't want to think this person you know is a bad person. But at the same time, these people don't just go like, oh yeah, we support you and stand you. Like, they send death threats. Or further victimization in the way of, like, we'll actually rape you or something like that. Or death threats, threatening to sue for defamation. Like, all sorts of things. And that's where we get into the false rape claims, because it can get a little foggy, because you have women who redact their statements because they're getting death threats, or they're getting more rape threats, or they're getting threatening to sue, or some women who have become pregnant by this rapist are getting these rapists or the rapist family trying to fight for the custody of this child. And yes, a rapist can fight for the custody of their child even if the rapist is convicted. It's terrible. So women kind of just back the fuck off because it's like, I want to move on with my life. Kind of deal. And the number for actual false rape claims is kind of foggy because, again, we're dealing with redacted statements where you have women who redact because of the threats and the harassment. There's some women who have redacted it because of pressure from family, friends, and all that stuff. And that can be considered a false rape claim. The statistic somewhere between 0.5%, I've seen 1%, I've seen 2%, I've seen 8%. That's still a pretty small number. If you apply it to a population of millions, that's still somewhere in the thousands. So if you're gonna come to me and be all like, yeah, but what about all these stories? Da, 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 da. Like, yes, keep in mind, 8% of a million is still pretty goddamn high. Imagine what 1/5 of a million is. So, here's the thing. When it comes to false rape claims, here's the consistent thing. Now, there was an article about this that I read, and sadly I cannot find it again because it has been lost to the sands of time, and sadly because of all the controversies and everything, I can't seem to dig it back up again. What I can remember is this. Most of the time when you're dealing with somebody who is someone who's going to falsely accuse, there's three things. One's from personal experience when dealing with false accusers. The false accusers who are actual abusers and rapists themselves do not make the accusations to make the accusations. There's a manipulation tactic in there. They will usually threaten the person to say, if you don't do what I want, I will threaten this. And generally, if that's not there, it's done out of a sense of power and control. If this person's walked away from the situation and, not hanging out with them anymore and they might be talking about it, that's maybe just them being angry about it and stuff like that. And still being angry and talking about it and all that stuff. But generally, when abusers use it, it's to manipulate. And it's targeted at their victims. And just at their victims. There's also, like, the con artists. Usually with the con artists, they come up with that perfect too good to be true story. And usually they have a history of being con artists already. So there's that. There was, I think, some more points, but I can't remember them. So yeah, so it's like, oh yes, and there's also the fact that they can pretty much memorize the story and can tell you the story exactly word for word from the beginning to the end. Sadly, someone who has actually experienced sexual assault will probably change their story once or twice because experiencing extreme trauma will do things to your memories. There is such thing as repressed memories. So you're going to change your story a couple of times. And plus, recounting a story, you're not always going to tell the story the same way twice, So sometimes you're like, oh yeah, and then sometimes you can remember that odd fact. Oh, like, yeah, I remember this. So sometimes people who aren't lying are people who change their story, which is the truth. And I ran out of time again. Okay, so I do just want to finish up here. I'll just put in a black card and put up my links to all my different stuff. Basically, to finish up here, what I want to see done is I want to see the cops actually do their job, get some sensitivity training. I want to see, I do believe in innocent before proven guilty, but I want to see less innocent despite proven guilty kind of deals. And I want to see rape being actually considered a violent crime. It needs to be considered a violent crime the same as, like, murder. And that needs to change. That's the extent of what I'm thinking, and these issues probably will start reducing a little bit, So thank you for listening. Please don't get your panties in a twist. Be reasonable. I don't mind debate, but I also do mind you being an asshole. Like I said, don't be an asshole. Mind your own business. These are words to live by. And also respect your environment, so clean up your litter.